Welcome to the Dr. Wyatt Show, where developing a long-lasting, happy relationship is the status symbol to achieve, and following my tools is one path to help get you there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, a licensed psychologist specializing in couples counseling. If you want to improve your communication so that you have more love and less conflicts, download my app, Keep the Glow, KTG, wherever you get your apps. Also, be sure to click the subscribe button for future episodes and follow me on social at Dr. Wyatt Fisher. When was the last time you gave your marriage an entire day to devote all of your focus, to work through your resentments, and to rekindle your love? Well, now's your chance. My Total Marriage Refresh Conference is coming to Tampa, Florida, July 28th. This is my signature conference. I've been doing this for around 10 years. It's one of my favorite things to do because I love working with the couples all day long, helping them make breakthroughs, helping them rethink how they're approaching their relationship, and filling them up with tools and skills. Could you use some tools? Could you use some skills? If so, attend the Total Marriage Refresh. If you live in Florida, it's a no-brainer. If you want to travel to Florida, that's even more powerful because that shows how much you care for your relationship. So if you want to spend the entire day with your partner, unpacking your relationship, resolving your issues, and rebuilding your love, attend the Total Marriage Refresh July 28th in Tampa, Florida. To learn more, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com, click on Marriage Retreats, scroll down, and then click on the Florida link. I hope to see you there. Today, I interview Christa Hardin, and she specializes in the Enneagram and marriage. And in this interview, Chris is going to explain to us how each of the types of temperaments in the Enneagram comes out in the bedroom, how it's expressed in the bedroom for better or for worse. Welcome, Christa, to the Dr. Wyatt Show. It's been a while since we've had a chance to connect. How have you been since last time we talked?
I've been well. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed doing our double interviews last time, and now we get to be on each other's podcast again. This is so cool.
I know. Yeah, it's great. I think it's been at least a year since we traded off doing podcast interviews. So I'm thankful that you were up for another swap. And so I'm sure this will be mutually beneficial for both of our audiences.
Yes, and our audience appreciated you so much last time. So thank you for having me. And yeah, so thankful for this time. It's fun to get together with another marriage researcher because I know we're always in the field with our couples and also examining the studies around.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're the expert on the Enneagram in marriage. And today you're going to focus on how is sexual intimacy expressed based on your Enneagram type. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
love to help couples with this area because, as you know, it's often under discussed.
Correct. Yeah, this is the first time I've actually heard about sexual intimacy being expressed differently based on your personality type. And
Yeah.
so it's actually a really fascinating topic. So I'm thinking this is going to be an interesting discussion. But just for the listeners, if you could tell them, just summarize, what is the Enneagram and why should we even consider thinking about our type on the Enneagram?
Well, the Enneagram is a system of personality that helps us to nuance how we can get along with others based on our temperaments. So, one of many great systems, but the elegance of it only being 9 types versus the wonderful Myers-Briggs, but that has 16 sort of clunky letters that require a really deep dive. The Enneagram can be a simple tool or a deep tool. So, as you can hear, I like both. But what I love about the Enneagram, as I said, is you can dive deep when you need to for couples. And it's important because, as we all know, sometimes you just don't get along with your spouse or partner. And so you need to know why. You need to have compassion on each of you. And it just helps to have that nuance to say, oh, out of these 1 through 9 types, very simply detected, I remembered that they're an 8 and they get into protector and defender mode. And that's because they don't like vulnerability. And that's just kind of the basics of an 8. And so when you hear about each type, you stop thinking it's all because they're bad and you're good, that fundamental attribution error, and you start doing your work to say, how can I love them for who they are? And how can I appreciate their gifts more? It's upper level human work that we all need to do as we head into spaces of middle marriage to say, instead of the honeymoon season, how can I love you for your gifts, but also work together with both of us aware of our weaknesses? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it
Mm.
reminds me the purpose that you are passionate about the Enneagram is similar to my passion for the Big Five, which
Yes,
is
that's a
the
great
same
one.
purpose. And the same
Yeah.
purpose is to help couples respect each other's differences more instead of
Mhm.
judge each other for those differences.
Yes, and the Big Five
Yeah,
offers us the scientific validity that is
sure.
phenomenal. So I'm glad you love that one.
Yeah, yeah, but it's the same purpose, right? Because the more
Mhm.
you understand your partner's temperament, how they're wired, you do start to interpret their behavior differently, and often it's with more respect, more
Mhm.
acceptance. It doesn't mean that we still don't want our partner to make adjustments and
Yeah.
changes here and there, but yeah, I think that's one of the top benefits of personality assessments in marriage is it helps both partners just see each other from a different lens.
Yes, I love that. Yes, and I think we need that because creativity is required if we're going to do long-term mating. And it keeps us strong and smart to be able to pivot and to learn. So that's what we're going to do today.
Okay. Yeah. So wherever you want to begin, how do we think about these different types? And then how is sexual intimacy expressed with these different types?
Well, I will take you guys through a brief tour of Enneagram as we walk through the types. So listen for you as you hear me talk about what each type can work on, and then you can hear the tips. So I'll start with one just because that's simple. But type ones tend to be improvers in the world. They tend to see the details. They tend to process negatively because they're scanning for error. And of course, this is needed in the world and in a marriage because you're always helping you and your partner to be better. That's a great survival mechanism. But in the bedroom, it can inhibit authenticity and the vulnerability we need to to expose ourselves to one another, to say, okay, here I am, warts and all. Do you love me still? And often a type one, when they're in their idealism, will say, not really. I thought you were pretty perfect, and now I've seen you aging, or I've seen you showing signs of wear and tear. And I'm just going to go with that survival mechanism of I should have somebody better because you're not good enough for me. Sometimes that's done by cutting off sex completely. Sometimes that's done by leaving and choosing another mate. But when ones know that about themselves, it helps them to say, oh my gosh, let me pause. Stop being, they're so active with all this negativity finding, just to pause, breathe, and then also acknowledge, wait a minute, I will one day also be showing signs of wear and tear. I too am imperfect, and that comes with age and time. And when that comes, or with the knowledge of the Enneagram, it's like, oh, a floodgate opens, and all of a sudden there's softness, there's kindness, there's humility, and there's also still going to be the desire for improvement, let's be honest. But it helps both partners to feel loved and accepted even as they are too. So that's
Mhm.
our type ones, and those are some tips you can take if you're a one. Plus, I'm sharing with all of you just so you know, in case you're like popping off and on only for your type here, that my new book, The Enneagram in Marriage, has a bonus hidden chapter that is digital. That if you buy a copy of my book, you can learn more about each of these types in my new digital chapter.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you can
And
learn more about
and
your types there.
yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for mentioning that resource. And what I hear you describing is when you're learning about your partner's temperament, not only is it going to help you respect them better, but also is helping yourself understand yourself better so
Yeah.
that you can catch yourself if you start having some faulty thinking or unrealistic expectations. So it's actually helpful for both partners, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're both going to have a lot more fun because you're like, oh, sex is, designed to give us release and joy together and closeness and bonding and sometimes even progeny. And so just to not have to have all these like looking for perfection will help you both to relax into the intimacy of just enjoying the messiness that sex can be and the closeness that it can bring you.
Sure.
Um, yeah, and our
Okay.
type twos tend to be givers, and they tend to, uh, in the bedroom, be givers as well, helpers. And so sometimes they can fall into a bit of a masochistic role. But how I've often seen it play out a little bit more frequently with my clients, and even with the research done by those getting their PhDs in this area, is that twos, these helper givers, like I'm thinking animal lovers, people often think of twos as like just foster parents, adoptive, like give the shirt off your back kind of a person. This is, like I said, the bedroom behavior at the beginning of a relationship. But sometimes once they've landed, so to speak, the partner, they really can tend to just walk away like, oh, okay, I got my baby or I got what I wanted. And they can manipulate and now not want to give sex. Now, a lot of twos will still remember the partnership goals that we were going to come together for sex. But if the partner doesn't know that the two might be in such a space of giving, they might not realize, well, it's not really that fun for the two to have sex. Like they already got you as the partner. Maybe they're more commonly females. Maybe they already got their baby. Maybe the house is here. And now it's like you're not even welcoming yourself to hear what this giver would want for themselves, nor do they even know what they want. So some good work for a helper and a giver to do is to differentiate, to figure out what do they want, and to really be brave to communicate that. To be honest that they also need a voice, and to really, the partner needs to really say, I love you no matter what, and I want to hear from the real you. And that can be hard if the partner's gotten into this selfish space of being given to all the time. So you can hear again, work for both partners.
Mm. That reminds me of the concept of two eyes in, two eyes out versus one eye in, one eye out,
Oh,
where yeah, it's really a wonderful concept. And the two eyes out is what you're describing. That's the partner who is always putting the other spouse's needs first. And what do
mm,
they want? And what's best for them? And what's their preference? And they
yeah.
lose themselves. And two eyes in is the opposite. That's the partner who's self-absorbed with what they want, what they
Mm,
think, what they prefer, and they lose track of their partner. And so likewise in the
mm,
in the bedroom, so in the bedroom,
mm,
some of us
mm.
lean two eyes in, it's all about me. Others of us lean two eyes out, it's all about what you want. But the ideal for all of us is how do we become one eye in, one eye out, which is I'm tracking
Mm.
me and what I'm feeling in the bedroom while I'm also paying attention to you and your
Yeah.
preferences and what you desire. And I'm letting both of those variables impact my decisions moment by moment in the bedroom and beyond.
Yes, I love that. That's a great concept. Thank you for
Yeah.
just bringing that home. You're making me think of how the masochist two-ish person can pair with the narcissist sometimes. And so it's
Yeah.
just so helpful for both to do the growing together.
Hmm. Okay. What's number three? Type three.
Okay. So type threes are like achievers, performers, people who tend to want to make their spouse feel like they're the best lover they ever had in bed. This is how they are in life too, outside of the bedroom, where if you're a three, you're like, I have to do a perfect routine. I have to be the best at work. I am the CFO. I am the queen. I am the king, sort of royal figure. And there's a lot of joy that comes from having a good leader who's competent and generous. And so people really like threes because they make cultures healthy and happy. But sometimes when threes go home, they can have that sort of kingly or queenly nature in the bedroom too. And we don't get to see who they really are underneath that mask. So that's sad because they're like, I'm performing, I'm amazing. And it's like, yeah, but who are you? Like, and sometimes they're so tired after all the performing that it's either that or it's almost nothing, where they just like fall asleep and they don't want to do anything. So it's complete sloth or it's all performance. And most of their spouses really just want the energy and effort to be spent with intimacy building and tracking together who they really are, mistakes and all, and to build safety together and to be real together. Versus kind of having to walk on eggshells together in and out of the bedroom. So threes can be a bit harsh. So if you're a three, know that your spouse may need to say things to you from time to time, like, okay, I don't want to do a performance with you right now, or I want some rest, but then let's take some time and come back to the bedroom. And the three needs to take a deep breath and realize it's not just about them, but that really coming back to that space of open, honest dialogue is worthy, even though it might hurt at first and feel a bit scary. So that's my advice to the threes.
Okay. Super. Yeah. What about number four?
Fours are artistic individuals and idealists, generally thought of as that person in the world who loves to create and to not follow the culture. So, in opposition to the three, also they love serving in heart in the world, but differently. They want to do it from a removed, withdrawing, unique space and go into melancholy. Now, in the bedroom, they can be romantic, artistic, and very deep and be that lover that somebody never forgets, but they can also withdraw if it isn't the perfect ideal romantic condition. They're similar to the one in that way that we talked about, the perfectionist, but it's a different vibe. The one is more efficient and the four is more mystical with it. And so it's hard. It's even harder in some ways to find the bedroom quality they're looking for because it has to be like the full moon or the stars aligned. And so what really happens in marriage with a 4 is the 4 can buckle down and say, I don't want anything to do with this unless I feel all the chemistry. And it's important that they work to mitigate some expectations with some pragmatism, to come down off the top of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of the top only, and to say, let's come back down together. It may not be as exciting, but it's still warm and we can have receptive desire. And that's just good tips for a 4 and for their partner to understand they're not trying to be critical of you. This is just a part of their personality. So to work with them on it.
Yeah, that's great. That reminds me of an analogy I use for intimacy in the bedroom, which is for the high libido partner, you want to be building the fire throughout the week, which is
Oh, I like
quality
that.
time, emotional intimacy, affection, because you can't just expect flames without any effort of building the
Mm,
fire. And then the low libido partner, the goal is don't be wet wood, which
mm,
is
I
which
like
is n-
that.
which is no matter how hard, the high libido partner's working and nurturing, that it's never
Oh,
enough before you're open to intimacy. The standard is too high. And so you're like wet
mm,
wood, like you're not going to light no matter what happens. And then the high
yeah.
libido partner burns out. And so it sounds like you're kind of speaking to that as far as don't be
Oh,
wet wood, don't have the standards so high. You
mm.
have to do your part also to be receptive to the bedroom.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it. Yep, exactly. And it's not all about you. So loving your partner means loving them even through those moments where it's just everyday boring moments. And
Sure.
yeah, thank you. I love that analogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Type fives are
Okay.
often a bit of a mystery because that's sort of the vibe they put out. They're the investigator of others and the researcher of others and the person who innovates, but also wants to take that introverted step away a lot of times. And that's not always because they're trying to not be in the bedroom. It might be usually more often because they feel a lack of energy and like that feeling of almost like an inert panic, like, I have to save my energy because if I don't, I've had bad experiences before. So sometimes fives will even describe themselves as not having a sexual desire. Now, if we were to get deeper into Enneagram work, which I do in my bonus chapter for you and in my book, we would talk that about the instincts. And there is one type of 5, the sexual 5, who has more interest in sex. And even I've worked with so many couples, I'll be working with one later tonight. I'm sure this 5 will say there is some sexual interest, but I do want people to know you might be with a 5, or maybe you are a 5 where you feel like energy's low and sexual energy's low. But I would encourage you that marriage is a great place to have sex because it's one of those things, one of the few things that you do with your spouse and not with anyone else. And when I've seen 5s take it out, they're like so upset. There's a lack of immunity, joy of that release of the sex. And often they're just like, even if the other partner also didn't care about sex that much, they're like, we're just roommates. We're so at each other's throats. And so there's something about sex that brings your chemistry together. So I would encourage you to find time for it if you guys like it at all, and also to find ways to save energy for it. So if you're the partner of the 5, to help them with that, to say, I understand you might need a nap, or you might need, a lot of 5s are so in their tech world or so many tabs open with their thinking and innovating and researching that they need a really good transition from work brain to home brain. They get so locked in. So just knowing that can help them take a walk around the block, have a little introvert time, and then head back to their partner for intimacy and sexual intimacy.
hmm So, what do you recommend to partners who are low libido and have no interest in intimacy, but they're married to someone who has intimacy? What do you recommend in those scenarios?
Well, sometimes I recommend, and my husband's a PA, and so sometimes we'll recommend that they see a doctor, usually to see about some HRT, even a very mild form of hormone replacement therapy, like just a cream, testosterone, some sort of booster that's safe, some sort of progesterone or estrogen cream that's safe. But often it doesn't even need that. It just needs the partner who's a little lower libido to say, let's compromise, I'm still loving you, and if this is your love style or love language, or we know, like Christa just said, it's healthy for us to be together at least occasionally for that release, that we would prioritize that. especially because you just said they're with somebody who has a higher libido. But also for that higher libido spouse to be able to say, I'm making space for you to have your introvert rest and recovery time, and I'm leaning into your desires too. Often it's a pairing with somebody who, especially if it's a female, feels like they have an excess of chores and the partner needs to be more activated to do these acts of service that will help them to feel like they have the energy to give them their love language, even if the sexual is not their highest.
Hmm. Yeah, because I know that's a big struggle for a lot of couples is that low libido partner will almost use it as a reason, right? Well, I just don't have natural desire,
Right.
therefore it's not going to happen.
Right.
And yeah, so to piggyback off of what you said, what I normally recommend there is, well, that's akin to saying I need emotional intimacy, and their spouse says, "Sorry, that's not who I am. It's not going to happen." Or I need quality time. Sorry, that's not going to happen. That's not who I am. And so when you're married, you have to be able to have this compromise, cooperative mindset because it's not just about you anymore, right? That's part of what you signed up for when you got married is this is about compromising. You're going to have needs that I don't have and vice versa. And when
Yeah.
we have that friction to be a good partner, we need to learn how to meet in the middle because I'd want you to do the same for me.
Exactly. I love that you encourage that. That's bold and brave. And we have to do that, I think, as marriage helpers, because if people are really coming to us to treat their marriage, if they want their marriage to work, this is such a big area of marriage that can't be negotiated out in most cases.
Yeah, that's right. As long as the resentments are cleared out and they've built up
Right.
their friendship, then the relationship, it would make logical sense that it could support physical intimacy.
Right.
But as long as those other things are in place, because it makes sense also if those things aren't in place, then
Exactly.
then it's even harder. Like I have low desire and I
Yeah.
have resentments and I don't feel like we're friends. And
Yeah.
so that's another big angle for sure. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I think we could do a whole podcast on that right there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. I love that topic. Okay, so type sixes are the security oriented types. They are not that far removed from fives, of course, when I said that they are investigators, but sixes investigate as well, but they're also known as the loyalists. They have a bit more energy than that five we talked about. And they have a bit more active worry, can be very reactive types. So in the bedroom, sometimes that can come out as more aggressive and fun, like, hey, let's make sure we mitigate all stress and possible intruders and mate poaching by coming toward one another with sex regularly. And that's great when a six takes that position. But sometimes a six can take the position of overly worrying and not making time for sex because of physical ailments or worrying that the kids will hear them. Not that almost every woman doesn't struggle with that, but there's an added neurosis to that if we were to talk big five. So I think that it's important that if you're falling into that worried space, a lot of that six who's like, yes, that's my thing. I'm so good at security. I'm so good at preparation. I am so good at negatively, making sure I look at all the possible troubleshooting. Just be aware in the bedroom to try to come back. Sixes can also be very funny, very light to that space to bring some trust into the bedroom. And as you said, Dr. Wyatt, sometimes those issues have to be worked out before the trust can come back. But also sixes, some amount of that trust has to come through some elements of faith, because I've seen sixes say before, once trust is broken, it's hard to come back. It is hard, but it's essential. So you have to do the work just baby step at a time to build trust back so that you can find your way to a more playful, light, fun time together. And of course, here, spouses of sixes, make sure you take time to figure out the ways to make your six feel the most safe, because that's going to be super important to them.
Mm. Okay, good. What about number seven?
Sevens are full of joy and enthusiasm, and this often really transfers into problem solving in life, as well as trying to make sure the bedroom time is fun and being able to problem solve with some lightness. Sevens, however, can be self-referencing, and again, some of those spouses, like we mentioned with threes, who can be a bit self-focused, where they can say, "I love pleasure, I love joy. Let's stay in this phase of the fun and the hedonism of our sexual responses together, and not necessarily want to do the hard work parts of marriage, but just the fun parts of marriage, including the sex parts." And so sometimes their spouse may say, like, you were self-serving during the sex, or you were wanting that, but not wanting to come out of the id sort of childlike part of life. And really, um, the Peter Pan syndromeness of it made me feel turned off and I didn't want to have sex with you, or I didn't feel my pleasure. And that is, of course, not a 7 at their best, but when they're not healthy, that's where it can lead to. So them doing their own feelings work, them slowing down to really consider their spouse's perspective and to show that truer, greater joy comes when we serve others. These are great tips for 7s. And again, their spouses can really speak to that too by just speaking up for themselves and saying, I know you probably don't mean to do this, but it's important that we also work on some other issues. I know it's uncomfortable. So for that spouse, what we usually say for 7 spouses is just take like 5 minutes at a time to talk about stress. Or we might use the John Gottman, try to make sure it's mostly positives and just a couple of negatives, because it's hard for a 7 to sit with the negative. So don't push it on them, but they have to do their work too and actually deal with it. So that's in and out of the bedroom for 7s.
Okay. And number 8.
Okay, so we just have 2 more types. Type 8s are the protectors and defenders that I mentioned way back. They are challengers, often thought as a militaristic sort of type in the way of just being a bit dominant, sometimes more assertive, independent, can be aggressive. And this can transfer into the bedroom where they are the dominant one, or they want to be dominated because they feel like, oh, I'm always the leader. I want to be led. And that can be okay for light sex play, but when it becomes too aggressive, too violent, this is a really negative marker for women, but also for just the trust building of a marriage when there's not a partnership and it's more about punitive S&M acts that aren't just, like I said, playful, but hurting each other. That's something for an 8 who isn't regulated to watch out for, that they're doing their daily workouts and allowing themselves to process and digest issues of anger and injustice that they're feeling, maybe even some vengeance, instead of taking it out in the bedroom. And that way they're not as dependent for all the psychological issues to be worked out in the bedroom, and they can just enjoy and allow for fun times together, which I think they really do love. They're a very physical type. So when they can just be enjoying each other and having a passionate, sensual time, it's wonderful for them.
It's interesting you bring up control and how much control people can struggle giving up control in general. And then in the bedroom, it's a lot of it is that vulnerability of letting go and letting go of control. So I can see this temperament number 8, that would be a real issue.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, sometimes they want to give it all up, and then their partner says, I don't want to do that with you. But it's really learning to respect their partner and finding the healing in other areas and allowing for this to be just intimate and joyful and partnered. You can have some fun and some spice too, but really honoring each other, because what goes in the bedroom does come out and people get hurt. So yeah, that's 8.
Okay, number 9.
Our last but not least, 9s. 9's a very common type. So if you haven't heard your type yet, this is likely you. 9s are peacemakers in the world. They love to make sure everybody feels good. They're very good at merging with the needs of the partner, like we mentioned with type 2s. They do it a little differently. Sometimes they can have that dependent personality as well, but they often do it in the way of just being really peaceful instead of manipulating. And so they might get a bit more stubborn, where they say, look, I'm a withdrawing type. 9s also love to withdraw into peace and into sloth. So sometimes I hear them say that about sex, like, I don't feel comfortable, so I don't want to, or I'm hitting menopause, so I don't want to, instead of allowing themselves to be creative and thoughtful about serving, even when, like we said earlier, they may not get the full benefit all the time. But also I think they can get that full benefit when they allow themselves to be in the tension a little bit more, and to maybe give themselves instead, hey, couple hours today to just relax, but not all day. Because life is about communication and connection, and there's a cost to that, and you have to wake up for that. You can't just be in that peace and sloth all the time. So often 9s will come back into their sexual prowess in a fun way when they make it fun, especially when their partner makes it fun, more of a game, has little bets back and forth, playing the games you see from places like Dating Divas or the cards, and just making it silly, light, innocent, but also intimate. And so I think that nines love the fun you can bring, but also, like I said, to challenge our nines that they wouldn't just give up on sex because sometimes it makes them even more tired, but to say instead, I'll come into my energy, I'll go on a good walk today, I'll maybe visit my doctor if there's an issue, and I'm not giving up on this important area. So that's my word for you nines.
Okay. So with all these temperaments and all these different strategies and approaches, what would you say is like the top tips that you would pass on to couples who are struggling in the bedroom based on all this information you shared?
Oh, that's so great. And it goes back to the first piece that we talked about, which was sex can be messy. And there's a lot of seasons of marriage. Sometimes you're giving more, sometimes you're taking more. Sometimes it's a break because it's difficult. And something I always tell people to go back to is it's okay to know that it's messy and really more about intimacy than orgasm. But to make sure you can also approach orgasm, come back to some basic exercises such as asking each other, do you like this better or that better? And just trying things out. And if you're not sure how to do that or if that's uncomfortable, there's a great exercise from Cornell University called Sensate Focus, which I know you're aware of, that helps people to even take a moment together to just see again in some non-sexual touch what feels good, and then building up to sexual touch to remind each other of what actually feels good versus rushing through and just assuming. And then I would lastly say, just remember that men usually have about 7 times more testosterone. So women need to, be given some time usually. So I know that we all know that, but it's a good reminder. And women enjoy usually having some kissing beforehand so that they can get primed. So just keep that in mind and share that with your partner. Also, like I said, you can get my bonus chapter of the book that can help you and your partner to walk through these questions and talk about it together. If it feels a little embarrassing, you can just read.
Super, Christa. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the work you're doing?
Oh, thank you. So I have a podcast called Enneagram and Marriage. I talk about marriage issues of all kinds there, not just personality type. But I also have a website called enneagramandmarriage.com, and I have freebies there. My newsletter is attached to that. My book is there. So you can grab all my tools at enneagramandmarriage.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Christa. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wyatt. This has been great.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Wyatt Show. If you enjoyed the episode today, be sure to leave a review. The reviews are a great way for me to know that someone is listening and someone is finding value in this. So if you find value in this podcast, be sure to leave a review. That also tells the algorithm that people are finding benefit in this, and they'll push it to more couples so more people can get help. Also, if you're ready to level up your relationship, if you want to learn my skills, my tools from the comfort of your living room at your own pace, join Marriage Saver Society. MSS is my leading digital course, and you will come away from that full of tools, full of strategy, full of skills. To learn more, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com, and click on Marriage Saver Society. And remember, your marriage is alive. If you care for it and nurture it, it will grow. If you deprive it and neglect it, it will wilt and die. The choice is up to you. Take care.